something the matter with my face?
Hello to all Cinemaster lovers. Hope you enjoy watching. Let's get started. The movie holes begins. In the heart of a vast desert under the scorching sun, there was a group digging holes in the sand. Suddenly, a rattlesnake appeared beside them, and one of the boys, who was already exhausted from the tough job, took off his shoe to touch the snake with it. The result was that he died and lost his life. At the same time, in the city, there was a boy named Stanley walking peacefully when suddenly a shoe fell from the sky and hit him on the head, causing him to fall to the ground. Since his father was researching a cure for smelly feet, Stanley decided to take the shoe home. But at that very moment, the police suddenly arrived and said the shoe belonged to a famous baseball player and had been stolen from a charity event. Because of this, the police thought Stanley was the thief. The police then took Stanley to their house and informed his family about what happened. Strangely, Stanley's family wasn't very surprised. Instead, they blamed it all on a curse that had haunted their family for a long time. The police also noticed other suspicious things. Stanley's father had a whole room full of dozens of shoes, and Stanley himself had pictures of that baseball player all over his room. With all this coincidental evidence, Stanley was put on trial. In court, he was given two choices: either go to prison or spend 18 months at a camp called Camp Green Lake for juveniles. Of course, Stanley chose to go to the camp as it was much better than prison. Soon after, the bus carrying him crossed the vast desert full of holes and arrived at a small, gloomy town where all the boys wore uniforms like prisoners. There, Stanley met the warden's right-hand man, Mr. Sir, who explained the camp's work system. The camp had no guard towers or fences because it was surrounded by desert stretching for hundreds of miles with no water sources. That's why no one dared to think of escaping. Stanley received 2 sets of clothes and a shovel to dig with. Every day, he was required to dig a hole exactly 5 feet deep and measure it with the same shovel. The more he dug, the more he was exposed to the harsh sun. Stanley also had to watch out for rattlesnakes and a type of lizard called the yellow-spotted lizard, as they could kill him. Then Stanley met the camp supervisor, Dr. Pendansky, who gave him a tour and emphasized rule number 1: never upset the warden. Pendansky assigned some boys to show Stanley his sleeping place, which still had faint traces of vomit from the boy who died at the beginning of the story. Dr. Pendansky called the boys by their real names, but they called each other by nicknames they had earned there. The youngest boy was named Zero, and he got that nickname because he almost never spoke. When Stanley asked where to get water for his canteen, he accidentally called another boy by his real name, so the boy immediately pushed him to remind him that only nicknames are used here. At dinner, Stanley received his portion of food, which was beans cooked in different ways. A boy named Peter snatched his food and told him he deserved it more because Stanley hadn't dug a hole that day. The boys asked Stanley why he was there, and when he told them he was accused of stealing the famous player's shoe, Zero suddenly asked if there was a red X mark on it. This question shocked everyone. Stanley confirmed it and remembered the trial when the baseball player said he grew up in an orphanage and always donated to charity events. That night, Stanley couldn't sleep and remembered his grandfather's words about their family curse, which was why his father never succeeded in any of his inventions. Even his great-great-grandfather once won a big fortune in the stock market, but was later killed by a famous criminal whose nickname was Kissin' Kate. She had a habit of kissing her victims after killing them, leaving a bright red lipstick mark on their faces. But Kate didn't kill Stanley's great-great-grandfather. She just stole his treasure chest and left him to die of thirst in the desert. The next morning, the boys woke up while it was still dark to start working. Each got a biscuit for breakfast and a shovel. But when Stanley took one, Peter immediately pushed him and took it back. It turned out that Peter's shovel was shorter than the others, and he didn't let anyone else use it. When the group reached the digging site, Mr. Sir explained to Stanley that if he found anything interesting while digging, he must report it immediately, and if the warden liked it, he'd get the rest of the day off. But at the same time, Mr. Sir insisted they weren't digging to find anything specific. It was just a way to build character. Then all the boys started working, sometimes accidentally throwing dirt into each other's holes. Stanley tried to warn everyone to be careful not to throw dirt into his hole, but they all laughed at him. As Stanley dug diligently, he thought again about the family curse. His great-great-grandfather, Ilya, worked on a pig farm and fell in love with the farmer's daughter, Myra. So he went to a local fortune teller named Zeroni for advice on how to win her heart. Zeroni told him to forget about it and go to America to seek his future. But Ilya refused to give up and went to propose to Myra. Her father refused because another suitor had brought a big pig. When Zeroni saw Ilya sad, she took pity on him and taught him a little trick. Every day, Ilya had to carry a small pig up a mountain to drink from a spring there while singing it a special song. Over time, Ilya would become stronger and the pig would grow and become a better dowry. After giving the pig to the farmer, Elia had to return and carry Zeroni herself up the mountain so she could also drink from the spring. If he broke his promise, a curse would fall on him and all his descendants. Elia followed the instructions for a few days. The pig grew, and he took it to the farmer, but unfortunately, Elia's pig and his rival's pig were exactly the same size. The farmer let Myra choose her husband herself, but she couldn't decide, so she suggested a guessing game to settle the matter. Her superficial attitude upset Elia, and in the end, he decided to travel to America as Zeroni had advised from the start. But unfortunately, before leaving, he forgot his promise to carry Zeroni up the mountain, which made her angry and she cursed his family forever. Back to the present, mister. Sir drove his car to the holes so the boys could fill their canteens and mocked Stanley because his hands were already full of blisters from the first day of digging. The first one to finish digging was Zero, who was so fast the boys joked he must be eating the dirt to finish that quickly. When Stanley finally finished his hole, no one helped him out, so he had to learn how to climb out by himself. On his way back to the camp, Stanley saw Mr. Sir pointing a gun at him, but in reality, he was aiming at a yellow-spotted lizard. The first shot missed, and the lizard puffed up its neck and ran towards Stanley, but Mr. Sir fired a second shot and killed it. Day after day, Stanley started to get used to the harsh camp routine. He woke up early and forced himself to eat baked beans, then dug all day until his hands got more and more blistered. Sometimes dangerous animals would appear, and sometimes the showers didn't work at all. The other boys made fun of Stanley a lot and called him weak. To avoid trouble, Stanley endured and stayed quiet. In the letters he sent to his mother, he lied and said he was having a wonderful summer at a normal summer camp. One afternoon, Stanley accidentally found a fossil and gave it to Pendanski, but the doctor told him the warden didn't care about those fossils at all. He added that the place used to be a lake, and the land around it belonged to the warden's grandfather. Here, we flash back. This town used to be lively and full of life. There was a trader named Sam who came in his horse-drawn cart to sell a special kind of onion that he claimed cured all diseases and even repelled poisonous lizards. Sam was in love with the town's schoolteacher, Catherine, and always brought her a special bag of onions. In return, Catherine gave him a jar of peaches she had made herself. Most of the town's men admired Catherine and didn't like the special attention Sam got from her. One rainy day, Catherine had to send her students home early because the school roof was leaking, and Sam came to fix it. Thanks to this, he had more chances to be with Catherine, and they gradually grew closer. Then he started helping repair other broken parts of the school. Every night, when Catherine taught the adults, Sam saw the men harass her with rude comments. The warden's grandfather, Walker, even directly asked her out, but her rejection angered him a lot. Gradually, the school building became the nicest in town, but Sam lost his mule and had to use a boat instead. On another rainy day, Sam and Catherine finally got up the courage to kiss each other, not knowing that Walker saw them, and immediately spread the news throughout the town. Within hours, the town's men gathered and burned down the school as punishment. Catherine ran in panic to the sheriff for help, but he was drunk and even asked her to kiss him too. When Catherine pushed him away, he mocked her, insulted Sam, and reminded her that relationships between different races were illegal and that Sam would be executed. Terrified, Catherine ran to warn Sam, but it was too late. He was shot and killed while in his boat. Sometime later, Catherine returned, shot the sheriff, and then gave him the kiss he had always wanted. After that, she left town and became the famous outlaw known as Kissin' Kate Barlow. Back to the present, Stanley is told that next time he finds something, he must give it to him. Later in camp, Stanley accidentally bumped into a boy who always bullied him, and they almost fought, but the other boys immediately intervened. From then on, Stanley gained the group's respect and was given the nickname Caveman. He even got a better spot in the waterline. Shortly after, Stanley received a letter from his mother saying his father's experiment was still failing and the landlord might evict them soon. At the same time, Zero saw Stanley reading the letter and confessed he never learned to read, and asked Stanley to teach him. Stanley refused, saying he wasn't a good teacher and was too tired at the end of the day and needed to rest. Another time, while digging, Stanley suddenly found a small object engraved with the letters KB. The boys guessed it might be a bullet casing, but it was too thin. Peter snatched it immediately despite Stanley's objections. When Pendanski saw it, he reported it to his boss right away. The warden appeared quickly, and all the boys were amazed because she was a beautiful woman. She was very pleased with the discovery, gave Peter the rest of the day off, and ordered the others to dig around Peter's hole. That afternoon, the boys worked harder than usual but found nothing because it wasn't the right spot. In the following days, they had to keep digging in the tunnel they had started, but the only thing they found was a small handle. Eventually, the warden gave up and ordered the boys to go back to digging individual holes like before. The next day, while Mr. Sir was filling the canteens with water, a boy stole a bag of sunflower seeds from the truck. When Mr. Sir left, the group started snacking, but soon after he realized the bag was missing and came back. The boys quickly hid the bag, but it accidentally spilled under Stanley's feet, so he tried to cover it with sand. When Mr. Sir returned, he saw the seeds on the ground, and to everyone's surprise, Stanley took the blame for his friend. This shocked everyone. Mr. Sir immediately took him to the warden's office for punishment. Inside her office, there were posters of Kissin' Kate Barlow everywhere. The warden showed Stanley her special nail polish, which she made herself and which contained rattlesnake venom. After putting on the polish, she suddenly slapped Mr. Sir across the face because he stopped Stanley from digging over something as trivial as sunflower seeds. Then, calmly, she let Stanley go back to digging. When Stanley returned to the digging site, the boys looked at him like a hero, and Zero had already finished his hole for him. To thank him, Stanley agreed to teach Zero to read. The next time Stanley met Mr. Sir, the man's face had 2 nasty scratches from the warden's poisonous nails. He was so angry that he refused to put water in Stanley's canteen. At the same time, Stanley remembered what he saw in the warden's office and realized that the small metal tube he found was actually Kissin' Kate Barlow's lipstick. Here we flash back again. Kate was killing people connected to Sam's death and the burning of the school, but she also stole a lot. After she took the treasure chest from Stanley's great-great-grandfather, she buried it where the lake used to be. While she was resting, she was caught by Walker and his wife. By then, the town had fallen apart after the lake dried up on the same day Sam died, and they sank into deep poverty. Instead of killing them, Kate chose a sweeter revenge. She let a lizard bite her and took the secret of the treasure's location to her grave. That way, Walker and all his descendants would keep digging forever in the empty desert for nothing. Back in the present, Stanley started teaching Zero to read and write. Zero revealed that his real name was Hector Zeroni, meaning he was a descendant of the fortune teller Zeroni from long ago. Because Zero dug very fast, he started helping Stanley, which made the other boys jealous. One afternoon, Zero talked about his mother, saying she worked very hard to raise him but one day suddenly disappeared, and since then, Zero had lived on the streets. Shortly after, one of the bullies started picking on Stanley again, saying he only finished his holes because he got help. Stanley confronted him, and Pendanski even encouraged them to fight. While they were wrestling on the ground, Stanley quickly lost, and that made Zero step in. To save his friend, and he almost killed the other boy, Pendanski fired a warning shot to stop them. Soon after, the warden appeared. The boy said that Zero was helping Stanley dig, but Stanley quickly clarified that it was in exchange for teaching Zero to read and write. However, the warden got very angry, and Pendanski started mocking Zero mercilessly, calling him stupid. After he couldn't take it anymore, Zero finally snapped, hit Pendanski with a shovel, and ran off into the desert. Mr. Sir wanted to chase after him, but the warden stopped him, saying Zero had no relatives and they could erase his records and pretend he was never there. At night, the boys talked about how Zero would surely die in the desert. Stanley was worried the whole time, remembering the story of his great-grandfather who survived 16 days in the desert after Kate robbed him. It was said he found a refuge called the Thumb, but nobody knew what it was because he was half crazy when they found him. The next day, a new boy arrived to take Zero's place, which upset Stanley, so he decided to plan something. When Mr. Sir came to fill the canteens, Stanley suddenly jumped into the truck, started it, and drove off. Mr. Sir grabbed the door immediately, and Stanley tried to push him away. Because of the chaos, the truck fell into a hole, but Stanley didn't give up. He got out of the truck and ran straight into the desert, with the other boys cheering for him. When the warden heard the news, she ordered Mr. Sir to report Stanley missing after 2 weeks because by then, nothing would be left of him. Under the scorching sun, Stanley kept going, ignoring the poisonous lizards around him. Finally, he discovered the Sam boat, and underneath it was Zero. Exhausted to the point of collapse, but still alive because he had survived all this time on jars of peach jam, the same peaches Catherine used to give Sam long ago, now preserved in glass jars. After Stanley ate some too, he suddenly saw a mountain in the distance shaped like a thumb, and immediately understood that this was where his great-grandfather had survived. The 2 boys left the boat and started climbing the mountain, which was a very difficult task. Stanley slipped and almost fell, but Zero quickly handed him the shovel and pulled him up. Unfortunately, this move injured Zero's hand, so Stanley tried to bandage it with what he had. They continued, but Zero grew weaker and collapsed. Stanley caught him before he rolled away, but at that moment, he too was at his limit and fainted. Stanley didn't give up. He carried his friend on his back and made it to the top of the mountain, just like his great-grandfather once carried the pig. Finally, Stanley saw a green patch and discovered a small spring with clean, fresh water and Sam's distinctive onions. Zero immediately woke up, and both of them ate and drank to regain their strength. Stanley even sang his family's favorite song, not knowing it was the same song sung to the pig, passed down from generation to generation. Now, Zeroni's spirit could finally rest in peace, and since the curse was broken, Stanley III, the father, succeeded in his invention and found an effective cure for foot odor by mixing peaches with onions, making the whole family overjoyed. The next morning, Zero made a big confession. He was the one who stole the shoes. He saw the shoes when they were being donated to the shelter and took them, not knowing they were so famous. But the police chased him, so he threw them off a bridge, and by coincidence, they landed on Stanley. The next day, Zero was arrested for stealing shoes from another store. Stanley wasn't upset. On the contrary, he saw it as fate and was glad it happened. At the same time, Stanley's lawyer arrived at the camp to take him after the court confirmed his innocence. The warden angrily kicked out the lawyer, but the lawyer promised to return with support. As for Stanley and Zero, once they recovered, they went back to the digging area and went to the hole where Stanley had found the lipstick tube. After hours of digging, they were overjoyed to discover a treasure chest. At that moment, the warden and Mr. Sir found them, but a group of poisonous lizards immediately surrounded the boys and the chest to protect them. The warden decided to wait until the lizards bit the boys and killed them. She told a story about how her grandfather made her dig even on Christmas when she was a child. The next morning, the lizards still hadn't bitten the boys. The waiting was suddenly interrupted when the lawyer returned with the police. The warden made up a story, saying the boys had stolen the chest from her office and escaped, but Zero proved the truth by pointing to the name engraved on it, which was Stanley's grandfather's name. After that, they returned to town, and the lawyer put the chest in her car before announcing that they were leaving. But Stanley refused to leave the camp without Zero, so the lawyer asked for Zero's file. When they discovered the file was missing, the police ordered an immediate investigation and